The Denver Broncos offense and Bo Nix were not sharp in Sunday's season opener. We'll tell you why the Broncos leaving sleepless in Seattle should be a wake-up call for them, hopefully, here in week 2. We'll break that down and much more here on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, Broncos Country? Welcome to another episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, joined as always by Sayre Bedinger, site expert over there at predominantlyorange.com. And unfortunately, Broncos Country, not the post-game report you were hoping for as the team drops their season opener in Seattle, 26-20, an abysmal performance by Denver offensively, and a lot of things that they're going to have to clear up. You're going to get all that much more here on today's episode of Locked On Broncos, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts or available on YouTube. Just want to say thanks once again to all the everydayers out there in Broncos Country. Thanks for making us your first listen. Subscribe or follow if you haven't done so already so you never miss out on what's going on with your favorite team, including reacting to some disappointing outcomes on Sunday. That certainly was the case here for the Broncos. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by our friends over there at PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Sayre, we kind of mentioned it. The Broncos offense a little bit sleepless in Seattle in their season debut. And really, there were some high moments, and then there were a lot of low moments here, particularly for the offense here. But really, I'm trying to figure out where to start here. Like, Bo Nix struggled the moment, a little big for him as he looked shaky in his regular season debut, despite looking good in the preseason. A lot of conversation happening right now on social media about it, but Bo Nix, not the sharpest in his season debut in orange and blue.
No, 26 of 42 passing with just 138 yards in this game, 3.3 yards per attempt. We had the couple of interceptions there from Nix and not really any rhythm to his passing, Cody. I feel like that was one of the biggest things. That was a difference between what we saw in the preseason, where, of course, we know there's a big difference between the preseason and the regular season. Look, we get excited about what we see in the preseason because you see those flashes of the brilliance that he has in him. And when you get to the regular season, everybody understands it's a different ball game. You and I have been talking about it all off season, like Broncos Country. Don't be surprised when Bo Nix goes through some rookie struggles, and you can expect it early. Look, Caleb Williams, I think he had 93 passing yards on the day, Cody, for the Chicago Bears, even in a win against the Tennessee Titans. So it's not like it's going to be 158.3 passer rating every single game. The Broncos ended up only losing this game by 6 points. And you know what? We didn't get to see that end of game scenario potentially in which Bo could have, who knows what he could have done with an opportunity there, if not for the defense giving up that reception. Well, I guess the offsides to Baron Brownings and then the reception to Tyler Lockett there at the end. But to me, as far as Bo Nix overall debut, like I was talking about it on Twitter during the game, it was rough. He made bad decisions with the football. He was inaccurate at times, but his receivers also let him down. The protection also let him down. There was no yak. There's so much to discuss from this game beyond just Bo Nix making some rough throws, but we have to acknowledge, like, he did make a lot of rough throws in this game.
Yeah, and look, I felt like a little bit early on, Sean, I thought, did a really good job of trying to get him some rhythm-based throws. I were talking like quick out routes, a couple of bubbles here and they're like, okay, hey, get a couple of completions, get your feet wet, because it was loud in Seattle. That ultimately I don't think was the deciding factor in this. But then when Denver was in a position, it was really weird to me. There was like this moment where everything kind of changed because, look, Javonte, first carry, really nice run. Second carry, slips, loses a yard, and all of a sudden that kind of summarized the run game for the day. The run game here for Denver really was non-existent. If you take away Bo Nix's total yards scrambling, really that's what it was. It was scrambles. It was trying to get outside there. If you take that away, the Broncos offense in general in this game only rushed, I think, if I'm not mistaken, for 64 total yards here, and that's just with Jaleel McLaughlin, Javonte Williams. Audric Esme had 2 carries for 14 yards, had the fumble. Luckily, Troutman recovered that, but Jaleel McLaughlin lead the way with 10 touches. Javonte getting 8. It was weird. Then the run game was non-existent, and then you look at Seattle's. They were able to run for over 140-plus yards. We'll dive deeper into that here, but in terms of that, I felt like there was a turning point in this game when Denver started to press, Bo Nix started to press a little bit, and it was trying to throw across the middle of the field. His first one was a high pass that sailed, right above Cortland Sutton, almost to the safety there. He just had some throws where he threw it into double coverage. He had an interception he threw off of his back foot, and luckily the defense came up big in those moments. But I feel like Broncos country, and certainly I think you and I maybe expected a little bit more out of Bo in his debut. We didn't expect it to look like this, but also in that same exact breath, I think we have to go back to the point that you mentioned that, hey, we said, hey, don't be surprised if he goes through and he struggles here, like whether it be his first game, whether it be game number 8 or 9 or 10, whatever it may be. Bo is a rookie. He is going to struggle. And certainly, yes, we have played Bo up quite a bit. Absolutely. Because we have seen moments where it's like, hey, we have to play Bo. We're talking about what we see. That's a lot of what this game is right now. Forget past superlatives. We see what we see in the moment. We talk about what we see. And then unfortunately on Sunday, it wasn't good for Bo. There's some things obviously he's going to have to clean up, but to the point that you mentioned, Sean Payton even said in the post-game press conference, protection was average at best. That's what he said verbatim. And he also said, hey, the wide receivers had some drops, and they said, hey, we got to go and help this guy out a little bit. So it was a collective, not just a one guy, not one person's fault here. Both struggled, but so did the receivers, so did the run game, so did protection. The offense just simply wasn't good enough.
It wasn't. And I know people are going to say this is just making excuses for a guy that had a bad game. And I'm not saying that. You can take it however you want to, Cody, but you mentioned the dropped passes. Like Lil Jordan Humphrey dropped a first down pass play that would have really helped the Broncos maybe extend a drive there, see what happens after that. Josh Reynolds had a drop pass that hit him right in the gut. Cortland Sutton had a drop pass. And then the officials didn't call a clear penalty, in my opinion, on a slant route that Cortland Sutton ran later in the game, to where, I mean, that would have also extended a drive. So all of these different things play a factor in having a poor overall performance, because then you start to press. Then you start to feel like, well, I've got to go make a play right now, and I've got to go put the ball somewhere and do something with it. That's why you see the throw off the back foot. That's why you see him forcing the ball on the deep crossing route from Cortland Sutton and Tariq Woolen intercepting it. So to me, yes, there was a lot of pressing by Bo Nix in this game. There was a lot of bad decision making, things we did not see in the preseason. But at the same time, like Sean Payton said, the teammates got to help the guy out. You got to make those catches. And we did see some tough catches in this game. Josh Reynolds made a tough catch. Cortland Sutton made a tough catch. I'm not saying it was absent of that, but I agree with you on the usage of the players in this game, the receivers not helping the Bo Nix out all that much. It all played a factor in what I would say a rough rookie debut. But again, it's a rookie debut. Look across the league. Caleb Williams, like I mentioned, 93 passing yards. Jaden Daniels had a couple rushing touchdowns, but didn't do much through the air either. You want to see these guys go out there and be able to take their lumps without having the fan base calling for them to be benched. I saw tweets for let's see Zach Wilson out there, even though he's the emergency quarterback. It's like, we have to understand, like, in order to develop a franchise quarterback, you are going to see that guy take his lumps along the way. And it was a competitive game. Ultimately, 20-26, the Broncos lose this game, and you had an opportunity to get a stop and get a potential game-winning, game-tying drive there at the end. So even with all the mistakes, Cody, we saw Bo Nix put this team in position to win with a really nice drive late in the fourth quarter as well.
Yeah, and look, you just want to find little things that you can build off of, and certainly we'll go back and say, hey, his debut wasn't great, but now all eyes shift on him, like, how can he clean it up? I feel like at times he did stare down one side of the field a little too long. We mentioned a couple of the off your back foot throws, the off platform throws, some of those things you're going to have to avoid. But really, a lot of the situations too that Denver faced, Denver was abysmal on third down. They were 5 of 18. Once again, an area of concern that carries over from last season. But also in those third down situations, you look at it, Denver's average distance to go on third down was like 7.7, 7.8 yards. And Denver often at times was behind the line of scrimmage, on first down or second down, and not ideal. Like they did too many things, too many self-inflicted wounds that put them behind the sticks. And certainly they were at times pressing. They were a little too aggressive at times, and it cost them. And then they were a little too passive at times, and it cost them. So I'm excited to be able to watch the tape on this one. Kind of to quote Sean Payton, you watch the tape, it's never as good as you think it is. It's never as bad as you think it is either. Where's the middle? Hopefully we can find that here in this game. But look, not a lot of room this week here for Bo Nix to breathe as the Pittsburgh Steelers and TJ Watt will be coming to town. That's going to be a very tough test from a defensive standpoint, and so much for this offense to clean up. Now, while the debut wasn't anything that Broncos country was hoping for, there were some areas of this game that did stand out that could help the Broncos out in future games, including on the defensive side of the ball. We'll highlight what they were able to do in Sunday against Seattle here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. This episode is brought to you by our friends over there at Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports done the right way. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And also, Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And Prize Picks is the only real daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups, they stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks makes it to where your pick is still live. You are safe in that regard there. So check it out today. Download the Prize Picks app and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your play. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something that you'd like to learn? Is it gardening, a new language, or how to finally beat your best friend in bowling? Well, therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come at any age. I've utilized BetterHelp therapy online in the past. I filled out a brief survey, had some questions there. It matched me with a licensed therapist within minutes. I scheduled my first session, had a really good session with my therapist there, decided to stick with her. But if you don't vibe well with your therapist after your first session, BetterHelp makes it to where you can switch therapists at any time at no additional charge. Life doesn't come with a playbook or a manual on how to do certain things, so it's important to understand what works for you. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, best of all, suited to your schedule to meet you where you're at. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
The Denver Broncos defense and special teams almost keyed a potential win for this team in week 1, but the bend don't break strategy didn't work out in the end as the defense spent too much time out there on the field in this game and got beat up by Kenneth Walker and the Seahawks offense in the second half. We're going to break all that down on today's episode, Locked On Broncos, and exactly what went wrong with the Broncos defense in a game that started off kind of legendary, in all honesty, Cody, but we'll let the fans know exactly what we saw in this matchup here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. I want to say thank you to all of you that make Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. We appreciate y'all so much. And if you haven't already, go ahead, hit subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as over on YouTube. And for your second listen, check out Locked On NFL for all the goings on around the league in a crazy week 1, as always. Cody, defense and special teams helped the Broncos get out to a 13-9 lead at the end of the first half. That 4-point difference was brought about by a couple of safeties. The first time that's happened since 1983, January of 1983, ironically against the Seattle Seahawks as well. 2 safeties kind of dominating in the pass rush department. Riley Dixon and Will Lutz out there doing their thing. It just wasn't enough for the Denver Broncos in this game against Seattle.
Yeah, there was an accumulation of things here. I thought special teams was probably the bright spot area here for Denver with what we saw from them. I felt like Marvin Mims had some good returns in this game. I thought the coverage units did pretty good. I mean, you talk about one of those safeties there, really kind of comes off of Bo Nix's first interception. You know, he throws off the back foot. Julian Love gets the 2 feet in on the 1 yard line. And all of a sudden, the Broncos defense generates pressure because defensively early on, they were doing that. And it was causing problems. The Seahawks offensive line was trying to adjust. Well, there was a holding call in the end zone that led to, obviously a safety here. Everyone did the safety dance at that point. And all of a sudden the Broncos go up 5-3, which is, hey, we got baseball scores here in week 1 of the NFL regular season. You got Tyreek Hill getting arrested before the first game of the season as well. You got Dak Prescott getting a mega contract as well. Like, it was a wild week 1 opener, and 2 safeties is kind of like the Sunday, the cherry on top of all that craziness that had happened there. But, I think it stemmed early on. I mean, the very first play of the game, Jonathan Cooper sacks Geno Smith. The second play of the game, DJ Jones pressures Geno Smith, and Alex Singleton intercepts it. And unfortunately, the Broncos offense couldn't punch it in there. So defensively, like in special teams, they gave Denver's offense and Bo Nix a few opportunities to say, like, hey, here you go. Here's a gift. Go put points up on the board. You had to settle for a field goal in a couple of those situations. And look, you're going to take 3, but when you need to come away with 7, when you're gifted good field positioning because of your defense, because of your special teams play, you had to take advantage. And unfortunately, Denver's offense couldn't do that. And that kind of takes away from the performance that we saw from special teams and defense, even though the defense faltered a little bit in that second half.
We talked about it in our keys to the game, how important it would be once you get inside the red zone to get touchdowns and not settle for field goals. And we saw that play out in this game, obviously in a detrimental way for the Denver Broncos. And of course, like, you want to see the offense be able to capitalize on that, to carry that momentum over. They just couldn't do it. And like you say, Cody, the Broncos defense just spent way too much time on the field in this game. I mean, there was kind of that battle in the first half where it felt like things were kind of going back and forth. And yeah, there was some shaky offense, but at the same time, the defense kind of was putting the clamps on. And then we just felt like in the second half, when the Broncos offense couldn't do anything on that opening drive, it just kind of felt like the air got let out of the defense, didn't it? When you were watching them play, they started to break off bigger chunks on the ground. Even though I know Geno had that touchdown run, it felt like more of the outlier in the first half than kind of where the Broncos like usually go, which is, hey, you bend all the way down the field, but then you don't break, you give up a field goal. They didn't look like that in the first half. They looked like they were kind of dominating and dictating the game. And then in the second half, Kenneth Walker comes out and starts breaking off big chunks on the ground. And Geno Smith was hitting more throws at the beginning of the second half as well. So it's just, like you say, too much time on the field for that defensive unit. And ultimately, I just think that the Broncos couldn't handle the offense not getting down the field and really sustaining drives. It felt like they were bearing too much of the load in this game in terms of that pressure to go out there and, hey, every single time you're on the field, you're going to have to get the ball back as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think going into halftime, Kenneth Walker had, 7 carries for 18 or 19 yards at that point, and then just as you mentioned, exploded in that second half, finishes the game with 103 yards on the ground, averages 5.2 yards per carry, including a 23-yard touchdown run that he had there that really kind of gave Seattle a little bit of a cushion. And really, I'd say the difference in this game defensively for Denver in terms of Seattle's passing game, Patrick Surtain did his thing against DK Metcalf here once again, held him to 3 catches for 29 yards. Pat got called for a defensive holding. He got called for pass interference. I felt like the defensive holding one was a little bit questionable, but then again, I mean, you're going to get that in week 1. It's going to happen. There were some questionable calls all around the league. That's not the reason Denver won or, would have won or lost this game here. Right. But I liked what we saw from PS2, really locking up DK Metcalf. It was Tyler Lockett that really was the deciding factor in this game. And man, he had a couple of tough catches, including the one you mentioned a little bit earlier with just about, 1.5 minutes left in the game here. It was 3rd down. Geno Smith found him, on a little bit of a crossing pattern where, honestly, I think it was a well-placed football. I felt like Riley Moss was in solid position. It was just one of those tough ones. You get the first down. Unfortunately, that runs the clock out and ends the game there. He had a couple of back shoulders there as well. I'm very excited to maybe go back and see what Riley was able to do. I know the instant reaction you're going to see on Twitter is, oh, he got cooked. He gave up this and that. Well, let's see what coverage Denver was in. Let's see what happened in terms of why a play broke down. I feel like the issue for them defensively really in that second half had a lot to do with tackling, taking some poor angles. That's defining of this game. You lose by 6 points, and some of those things are the glaring moments you're going to go back and you're going to watch the tape and say, wow, if they get a stop on this 3rd down, it changes the whole complexion of the game. But, some things that they're going to have to clean up. I came away more impressed with the defense than I think the overall end game vibe feels going to be for a lot of people. Obviously, there's going to be times where they got to get off the field. They got to make plays. They were close on a few plays there, but they gave up some chunk yardage. But that is a byproduct, in my opinion, of them being on the field far too long in this game. The offense not being on the field long enough for them, and that certainly was an issue here in this game in general here. But I think as we continue to look here for the Broncos defensively, you look at some of the things that have impacted them. I think another thing too, penalties. 8 penalties for 60 yards accounted for in this game. A good portion of those coming on the defensive side of the ball. The offsides a little bit late there by Baron Browning. That definitely hurts Denver. But Denver's defense, in my opinion, they played well enough at various points of this game at crucial moments where if Denver's offense was moving the ball, they were able to put up points. It was good enough to win the game here. Unfortunately, not the outcome as the Broncos dropped their season opener to the Seattle Seahawks at Lumen Field. And look, there's not a lot of time coming up here as the Pittsburgh Steelers and TJ Watt are coming to town. TJ Watt after week 1 looks like the NFL's defensive player of the year already. Should have won it last year, but he looks like a man on a mission here. And the Broncos offense, after a performance that they gave in this week's game, they can't play like that. We'll take a look at some superlatives, including, is the Broncos wide receiver room a position of concern after Sunday's loss? We'll dive deep into that much more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by our friends over there at the Game Time app. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals that are going on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Make sure you check it out today if you want to attend your favorite sporting event. You got NFL games now on deck all season. The MLB is starting to near its end, but there's still games going on in the ballpark. Or if you want to go to a concert or a comedy event nearby, Game Time is the place to be, and they have access to everything that you need to see in terms of best seats, best views, their best price guarantee. More importantly, on top of that, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. One of my favorite features is being able to see my vantage point from the event that I plan on attending with their seat view function. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Is the Broncos wide receiver depth and overall outlook at the position a little bit more questionable after the team's week 1 season loss to the Seattle Seahawks? It's a fair question, as Sean Payton might say, as he's looking for answers for overall contributions as Bo Nix and the Broncos offense sputter a little bit here in Seattle. I want to say thanks so much to everybody in Broncos Country. We appreciate you so much for rocking with us. Hey, when the Broncos win, it's great. When they lose, it feels terrible, but you need a place to come and digest everything, break it down. If you don't like hot takes, if you don't like clickbait, you don't like overreaction, you're not going to get that here. We're not going to throw that in Broncos Country's face. We're going to bring objective analysis and conversation to the table here. We want to include you in that every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So thank you so much to all the everydayers out there. I mean, Sayre, let's open up with this as well. Let's open up with some superlatives following week 1, right? Because usually after week 1, we see around the NFL, there's some week 1 overreaction. So let's kind of put a Broncos spin on this a little bit. Is the Broncos wide receiver depth a little bit of an issue after this game? I think you and I, after the 53-man roster came out, said to ourselves, like, you're keeping 5, and this is the 5 that you're keeping. And when you factor in the roster gymnastics of elevating other guys off the practice squad, I felt like it was a little bit of an issue here for the Broncos. And I couldn't help but find myself wondering a few times, man, I wonder if Tim Patrick makes that catch.
Yeah, I mean, Cody, I think everybody was wondering that, especially those drops, specifically the ones that we already mentioned, the Lil Jordan Humphrey, Cortland Sutton, Josh Reynolds, all dropping key passes in this game. And I can't help but wonder, I'm really concerned about Marvin Mims getting 1 target in this game, 0 receptions for 0 yards. So the idea that we were giving Sean Payton the benefit of the doubt after training camp, after preseason, well, maybe he's hiding Marvin Mims out there. Maybe he's trying to kind of delay whatever the game plan is. There ain't no hiding in the regular season now. You had a chance to utilize Marvin Mims in this game, a game in which you stunk in yards after the catch, a game in which your guys couldn't get open beyond the sticks a lot. I know we got to go back and watch the film. Like you said, hot takes, knee-jerk reactions after week 1. The Broncos struggled with those things. They struggled to get separation. They struggled to get open. That's why Bo Nix was making plays on the run or trying to make plays on the run. Guys aren't getting open right away. So when you have somebody like Marvin Mims that's wasting away, when Devon Vele is, and all due respect to Devon, because a great outing for him in his rookie debut as well, 8 receptions on 8 targets. Like, that's awesome to see.
Yeah.
But not at the expense of Marvin Mims getting involved in the offense. I don't understand it, Cody. When you have somebody, we didn't see Greg Dulcich get involved until late in the game as well. We didn't see a lot of schemed touches for those guys, Marvin and Greg specifically. And I'm just sitting here wondering why. I'm sitting here wondering, okay, those 2 guys could really help you in the Yak game. They're 2 of your best in terms of doing exactly that, and you're not getting them the football. I'm very concerned about the Broncos wide receiver position. I'm very concerned that Lil Jordan Humphrey is getting targets over Marvin Mims. I'm very concerned that Devon Vele and Cortland Sutton are combining for 20 targets in this game when Greg Dulcich and Marvin Mims are combining for 3 or 4. That doesn't make sense to me. That is scheme wise. And I know Sean said, I've got to do better after the end of the game. I think that's one of the main areas where he can do better.
Well, and you look at it as well, like with the decisions made, like, okay, hey, you're going to keep Troy Franklin inactive. And look, he's got some speed, but is he going to help you win this game? I don't know. I don't think so at this point. But if you are going to keep 5 wide receivers on your active 53 and you're going to keep one of those guys inactive and you're going to bring a practice squad player up as a game day elevation and you're not going to feature really one of your guys on the 53 and Marvin Mims, you're really relying on Cortland, you're relying on Josh Reynolds, and you're relying on Lil Jordan Humphrey, and that's simply not good enough. And I think you made a great enough point of kind of driving that home. But to me, it's like, are there going to be moments this year where we see a wide receiver make a play or fail to make a play, and we're sitting here thinking to ourselves, like, okay, hey, at least Tim Patrick's going to catch that. At least Tim Patrick's going to move the chains right there for a first down. Like, there are a couple moments I think we can make that judgment here in this game. And I certainly don't want this to become a recurring theme, but unfortunately it's like, hey, you made the bold decision to move away from a veteran security blanket that could have been beneficial for a guy like Bo in favor of Lil Jordan Humphrey, who, look, I understand offers you value on special teams, but when that production is not there from the receiving standpoint, it is a concern. Obviously, we know that Devon Vele is a little bit further ahead than Troy Franklin at this point. Seeing him get his touches, that was great, and he's going to continue to grow here. But you need guys that can challenge the defense a little bit, and Tim's one of those guys. I think with Tim, with Cortland on the field, I think your personnel groups change a little bit. Lil Jordan Humphrey's still growing and still developing as a player. So you're taking that shot on him necessarily like, hey, is he going to take this big jump here this season? I just don't know about that. That to me, I think is a little bit of a concern. I think it's a concern that Broncos fans have certainly coming out of this game here in week 1. We'll see how it impacts things going into week 2. But I want to even highlight this too. You look at the offensive line. Garrett Bowles left the game here in the 4th quarter with an ankle injury. Sean Payton said it was a bruise. He should be fine. Matt Parrott came in. And look, there was one play where Matt Parrott got absolutely pushed into the lap of Bo Nix. Like, Denver's depth in certain positions here, they've gambled on certain things. And I'm a little anxious that, hey, okay, if something does happen to Garrett, Matt Parrott, in my opinion, just from watching him in the preseason, watching him at camp, and certainly watching him in these final snaps he played against Seattle, I'm very concerned about left tackle depth here for this team.
Yeah, that was ugly. That was almost as bad as the rep that Seattle's replacement right tackle had against Jonathan Cooper, where Cooper basically knew the snap count better than the tackle. But I'm with you on that one as well, Cody, in terms of that, potential injury to Garrett Bowles being detrimental for a guy like Bo Nix. Like, if the protection was barely average with Garrett Bowles out there for the majority of the game, imagine if Matt Parrott has to start at left tackle at any point this season. That's a tough situation to be in. And to me, it extends to this running back group that was curated by Sean Payton as well, Cody, when you talk about concerns after this game. Javonte Williams, very curiously, not getting as many touches or even more touches than Jaleel McLaughlin in this game. Now, we know Sean Payton really loves Jaleel McLaughlin, and we hear these terms like joker thrown around all offseason, but if the joker is getting negative yardage on passing plays that are designed to go to him, you're going to have to find a new one, and you're going to have to find somebody else to put out there. Not that Javonte, when he got an opportunity on again, talk about guys letting Bo Nix down, Cody. Javonte got a pretty well-placed screen ball from Bo Nix and got tackled at his foot. We're not used to seeing, I guess after last year we kind of are, but I don't want to get used to Javonte Williams getting tackled just when somebody wraps their hand around his foot. I want to see them break that first tackle, get past the first guy, make the first man miss, as opposed to, what we've gotten accustomed to now over the last year plus with Javonte not being able to create yardage after contact. So it extends beyond the O-line and Bo Nix, specifically in terms of the concerns from this game. You talked about that replacement with Matt Parrott there. And now I think you look at just these running backs. I don't know. It's not all they're doing. Everything works in cohesion with the offensive line setting things up, but the backs did not impress in this game, in my opinion, in terms of making plays out of the backfield, especially as receivers.
I think it's a fair judgment as well. And I felt like, too, like even for Jaleel, for Javonte, it was weird to see them slipping the way that they did. And look, I understand footing could be an issue. And I think there's like this running narrative that field there is not great for players, like, in terms of foot readiness, whatever it may be. But I look at Kenneth Walker and I look at what they were able to do. I didn't see them have the same struggles. And so it's like, we can't use that as an excuse. You need to see more out of the run game. But look, Sayre, this is going to get tougher here for Denver because, hey, week 2 is coming. I understand it's the Steelers offense and they got some playmakers there. And obviously they have some athleticism. Justin Fields started over the weekend in week 1 as the Steelers went on the road and beat Kirk Cousins, the Atlanta Falcons. Really, it is that defense that I think is a little more concerning because they will blitz a lot. They will play some man coverage. They will play zone. Seattle pretty much sat in zone for a large portion of this game, kept everything in front of them, and they just took what the defense gave them. Like, hey, we're going to throw it short. The defense rallied up and tackled. Denver had nowhere to go. This is a huge challenge this week that's coming up in week 2 as the Seahawks, man. The Pittsburgh Steelers come to town following the Broncos loss to the Seahawks here in week 1. TJ Watt, man on a mission. Like, that dude was an absolute monster. I watched him in the early games. He's going to be a problem here, and that's going to present a challenge in and of itself. And how does Bo Nix, like it's hard to say, hey, how does Bo respond from this game? You have to go and play the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and then you're going to play the Jets, and you have to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defenses. Like, there's going to be a tough string of tests here for Nix and certainly this offense, and they don't have time to just say, hey, we hope it gets better. I'm very curious to see what they decide to do to make things better this week. And look, Broncos country, a lot of questions following Denver's week 1 opener. 0-1 to start the season. Not ideal. Not how anybody expected Bo Nix to start out here in Denver. But as we're going to continue to hammer home, he's a rookie. He's going to make mistakes. And you're going to have to live with that. We're all going to have to live with that as we watch and cover the team, as you as the fans root for the team. There's going to be high moments. There's going to be low moments. Stay in the middle. Stay even keeled here. And hopefully the Broncos and the offense can respond this week. Sayre Bedinger, myself, we have you covered every single day leading up to kickoff next Sunday for Denver's home opener, including we'll have a conference call with Sean Payton Monday morning. What do we get in terms of our takeaways from him and some other news and notes coming out of the game? You'll get that and much more on tomorrow's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.